Hello, welcome to our Capstone presentation. This presentation will be about our ABC hospital management software slash website. My name is Lucas Furlong and my partner was Matthew Wilcox. Starting with the introduction, my name is Lucas. My roles, I was the front end developer. I worked on the visuals of the website and the connection to the API. Um, the tasks that I had were to create our unique feature, which was an AI chatbot that could take in certain symptoms that you're having and diagnose you based on that. And there was other functionality regarding that as well. Design the UI for the website and create the website functionality. As we used React, there's a lot of certain functionality regarding that, working with the virtual DOM or document object model.
Hello, as Lucas mentioned, my name is Matthew Wilcox, and my roles on the team included the team leader, the backend developer, and the database administrator. So my tasks included submitting the deliverables that the team prepared, designing and building the web API, the UI, and the API or the database both communicated with, and also designing the database structure and populating it with data.
So, what is our project? Basically, it's a hospital management system. Essentially, what that is it's similar to going on to MyChart if some people have used that before. And what that is about is you logging into some kind of portal that you can use and seeing information regarding like your medical history, symptoms, prescriptions, diagnoses, and things of that sort. So we included that patient, doctor and patient information, the patient diagnoses and prescription information, and we also had on the patient view a chatbot AI for diagnosis capabilities, as I said previously. So kind of going over the project scope. So we started with our goals. What we wanted to do was create a fully functional website that could be used in real life. So basically, we wanted to be able to take what we created and allow maybe like I don't know, a lesser hospital to be able to use it, to kind of connect it to their database and create something that's functional and easy for them to use, minimalistic in design and things of that sort. We also wanted to find and use common website themes like a session timer, login, form submission, something that you could see on most websites that you interact with, just so we know what the industry standard is. Also, we wanted to introduce that unique feature, which was the chatbot AI. I think we maybe set that goal like a little too high, perhaps, but we did end up getting it done, and it was something that was really interesting to work on. Overall, the deliverables was to create that chatbot, the forms for the diagnoses and prescriptions. So there's going to be a form on the website that you can interact with in order to edit and create new prescriptions and diagnoses, and also delete them too for specific patients. Also, just on the front end of the website, just right when you enter it, there's going to be a login functionality as well. That was one of the deliverables that we wanted to include. So the overall plan, we felt inevitably moved out of scope. What we consider like scope creep, where we continuously wanted to add more things to make it more user friendly and also more like other websites, like things that could even be concluded as like related to my chart to like being able to create doctor's appointments and things of that sort. So we kind of just like wanted to keep doing that and like also add insurance information also as well. So those things kind of like ended up wanting to be a part of our plan, but we had to like kind of like realize that like, hey, we don't have enough time to work on that and kind of cut it off. We also wanted to include like the admin view, and we had to do that later because we weren't sure how to like actually create doctors accounts and do that through like an authenticated version. So we can't just have like anybody just go and create a doctor's account and then log into it and then like edit patient information, of course. So we had to add that admin view in to allow an admin to log in and then register a doctor account or create one. And then we removed and included data within our database structure that's kind of back to like the insurance information and things of that sort. And then adding certain things like we had to have some certain like API tokens for the chatbot that we had to add to like a specific area in the API to use to mess around with all that stuff. So that was some things that we had to add in there in the database structure. Just random things like that about our plans that we had to kind of modify over time. And then constraints, definitely the first one was time. Both Matt and I did feel like we got like a good amount of time to create something that we could like see as like quality, I guess, in a sense, but we also felt at the same time that we were burning ourselves out because of it too, which definitely is a constraint. Like if we had more time, we would have definitely, felt more mentally stable and capable to like work on those things like that and be able to deliver the product that we truly wanted without having like that scope creep or whatever. Experience. Personally, I haven't used or worked with React before this project, and a lot of the time that I had to spend was just trying to learn it and see like how things work with like that virtual DOM and you know how JSX works and things. So those things definitely caused me to have some trouble. um, JavaScript as well. I'm not super familiar with it. Like I've worked with it a good amount, but like having to like fully do that for like website functionality because that's where a lot of the functionality of a website came from was JavaScript. So that caused me a lot of problems as well. And I know Matt had some issues with actually setting up the API and interfacing between the API and the database as well. Design communication is more associated with Matt and I communicating about what the API is going to design going to be. We did have an error at one point where it was like returning something that I couldn't modify on the website end, front end, and it was just causing like a problem, and we had to take like a day to figure out how to fix that. So that was like some kind of like a type of constraint that we could consider design communication. We weren't really sure necessarily that we discussed exactly what we wanted out of design for each other, and that was just mostly because of that like experience constraint as well. And then Matt also talked about a lack of tools. Like he felt as if he had like a lot of work related items that he's used in his real life job that he could consider something that could have made his job a lot easier, of course, but it's behind a paywall, and obviously you don't want to be able to like, or you don't want to have to pay for something of that sort to utilize that within our project, of course. And then finally, the assumptions a part of our project. We honestly thought like at the beginning of this we were gonna get things done on time and we were gonna have any issues. The time, like I said, the time constraint was a huge one for us. We felt like we could have got a lot more done with the scope creep and things of that sort. Basically, what we actually wanted to get done, but we had to cut it off out of the plans. We assumed things to work when they didn't. So basically, what that means is like when we were working on something, we just thought it was just going to be plug and play, like the website and API connection. That's why Matt and I wrote it there. We just thought that like we would be able to type in a few lines of code and we'd be able to pull in data from that API. Just do like a little fetch command and do like that. The HTTPS post put methods, get and all this stuff. Right? So we thought that was just going to be simple and plug and play, and that kind of goes into the next point that we like assumed that certain things would take less time than they did, so that those two things kind of connect with each other, of course, overall. And we just thought that it ended up being like a lot more work on that end regarding like things that we thought would be easier. um, Moving on to the project structure, it's pretty simple. Everyone here also worked with the same project structure. Just to kind of go over it again, it's going to be a web server, the database, and then the front end website. So basically, what that means is you have the front end website that you interact with. If you want to get or send data back to the web server, which is also considered the web API, the website handles that and it will call it up and say like, hey, here's some information, I want to send it to the database, and then the web API will be like, okay, thank you, and then take in that information, process it in an easy way for the database to take it in, and then the database will take it in. And then obviously if you want to call information too and get information, you will ask the web API if you can take that in, and the web API will contact the database and be like, hey, database, I want that information. Database will send it back. Web API will format it, and then the front end UI will be able to use it. And then overall, our whole project was React and .NET MS Access based. So the front end was going to be a React based web server, a web page, and then the web server was .NET, and then we also used MS Access as the database. And then moving on to my project structure personally, for the web UI, I just wanted the design to be minimalistic and simple, like easy to everyone to use, like not to sound like kind of mean or anything, but like I kind of wanted like a monkey or like an idiot to be able to use it. That's how most people design certain things, especially with coding, is that like you want it to be intuitive, and that's why I wrote that there. You want it to be able to be so simple that like literally anybody could use it, and that's really what I was trying to go for. And also what I mean by intuitive too, like you'll see when you actually go and get the website preview and actually see what's going on. There's a option for you to like look at the patient cards and click on them and then see the patient information from the doctor. So those are certain things that like actually make a difference regarding like that intuitiveness, like, oh yeah, I can click on that patient card and it shows me the information just like how I want it to. It's super simple and easy. Also, like the one thing I thought would be kind of funny and also interesting is like, wow, I want this to feel like a hospital website. Like sometimes when I go into hospitals, like I think, wow, place is kind of depressing, and you'll see on there like I don't think the website's like look depressing looking, but it's like kind of got that grayish theme. Like it feels like a hospital. It's kind of clean, minimalistic, kind of just exactly what you expect a hospital to look like. I feel like. And then the functionality, I had to import a few libraries, especially with a chatbot. I had to import some things that would make it easier for me to like code because I obviously couldn't make something from complete scratch as this was a part of like one of the constraints was the experience. Um, and then I also imported some things with like the side navigation bar that has some like library UI that I imported. So those things are interesting to look at when Matt will go over that and show you what the website looks like. And then also some of the things regarding like the actual session timer, those are some things that I had to import as well, because there is a session timer on the website. If the user is inactive for 25 minutes, it'll ask them if they want to continue their session or they can log out, and it'll bring you back to the login page. We also wanted to base this off other website ideas. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, we wanted to include that login functionality, form support, like a navigation bar so you can get around the website, separate views, and things of that sort. And that kind of goes into the next point too, like that simple navigation and access control, something where you can just type in a password and you log in and you see what you need to see and you can get out what you need to get out of it, and you can just log out and be done with it. Nothing super convoluted, nothing super complex or whatever. When you look at it, you're not overwhelmed, and that's really what my design process when I went into it was.
I was in charge of designing the structure of the web API. A few factors that I wanted to keep in mind while I was designing the web API was, first of all, I wanted it to be efficient. I wanted it to be easy for the UI to communicate with. I wanted it to be reliable. And then also the structure was loosely based off some of the .NET web APIs that I had worked with during my internship. The functionality that the web API needed to provide was, first of all, sending data to and receiving data from the web UI, sending data to and receiving data from the database, and also manipulating the format or types of data as needed to meet the needs of the UI and the database. The general structure I had for my web API was there would be a controller that the UI would communicate with directly. The controller would then communicate with a service, which would then communicate with a kind of general purpose SQL service. So in this case, we have a get user endpoint that is in the user controller. If we pass it a username, that will be passed to the user service, which will then pass it to the SQL service. Which will make the SQL query string, send it off to the database, and then return what's the query returns. The user service will then format that into the format that the UI needed, which will then return it to the controller so that it can be sent back to the UI. In this case, what would be returned would be an array of user objects in JSON format. Um, Even though this call would only ever return one user, the UI had a little bit of an easier time handling an array, so I always tried to send it as a JSON array whenever possible. For the structure of the database, a couple factors that I wanted to try to focus on attaining were, first of all, I wanted the design to be intuitive, I wanted it to be efficient, and then I also wanted it to be complete so that it had all of the data that we needed to provide the functionality where we're trying to provide. Um, and like I said, the functionality was mainly just storing the information we needed for our UI's functionality. The design did not end up being quite as intuitive as I was hoping for, but it was indeed complete. First of all, we have a user table that will have a username and an account type. Depending on the account type, there will either be a record in the patient table or the doctor table. Um, the patient table will also track which doctor is the patient's primary doctor. So the primary doctor would be the only doctor that is able to edit the diagnosis and prescriptions of the patient. So even though patients may or may not have a diagnosis or a prescription, it will always be prescribed by their or diagnosed by their primary doctor. And then regardless of what account type a user is, if they've signed in before, there will be a record in the identity session table recording that. Now that Lucas and I have described a little bit about what the project is designed to do and how it's structured, I want to give a demonstration of how it actually works. So first of all, I will show you the admin screen. The admin screen we had to add because we realized we needed a way to securely allow the creation of doctor accounts. Initially, we had just had them click a register now button on the login screen and create an account like a patient. But then we realized that was very insecure because um, anybody could log into the account, log in as a user or a doctor account that they created. So instead, we created an administrator view so that an administrator would have to manually create the doctor account and then send the credentials for this account to the doctor for them to be able to log in and begin helping patients. Once a doctor has um, received their credentials, they would be able to log in and access the doctor view. Maybe. There we go. Okay. So from the welcome screen or the home screen of the doctor view, there is a list of info cards on the various patients that this doctor cares for. If they want to click on one of them, for instance, Jane Doe, they'll be able to see all of the diagnoses and prescriptions that Jane Doe has had on her record. Next, if we go to the sidebar, we are able to go to the forms specifically for the um, diagnoses and the prescriptions. This allows the doctor to um, monitor and update, create diagnoses and prescriptions for all of their patients. And then, like, if they want to create a new one, they would just go here and fill out all of the information. And then prescription is pretty much the same thing, just with a few different fields because it's handling different data. For patients, if they don't have a account, they can create one here. And once they have their account, they will be able to log in to the patient view. First of all, on the home page, you have a little info card that has the patient's primary doctor and some contact information for them for if they need to reach out for an appointment or anything like that. We also have the chat bot, which I will demonstrate in just a second. Then if we go over here, we have the same view that doctors have. So patients can come in here and view their medical history um, just for personal reference. Maybe if they need to fill out some paperwork or something like that, they can just view it here. As Lucas had mentioned previously, the unique feature of our project was this health bot. It is a little picky about what um, the messages need to be for it to work properly. Um, but once we get it initialized, we're able to start going through this little symptom checker. I'm going to try to get it to tell me that I have strep throat. So I'm going to say sore throat, pain when swallowing, and I'll also have a fever. Uh, Male, and then this particular user was born in 1975. Yes, we do have pain swallowing, and we do have a high temperature. And we also have a sore throat. We have had these symptoms for, we'll say, a day or two. Oops, didn't quite pick up my input. There we go. And this user has never smoked. Shortness of breath, no. None of these look like symptoms I would expect from strep throat. Severe sore throat, yes, that's something that I would expect from strep throat. Do difficulty opening mouth? No, I don't think so. No, we have not traveled to Africa. I will say that we have white spots on tonsils and then some difficulty swallowing. Our neck is a little swollen as well. I don't think any of those other symptoms would necessarily be from this. Red spots on roof of mouth, yes. And I believe bad breath is also a symptom of strep throat. Okay, it believes it's found what we have, so let's see what it's got. Okay, so below is the full report. Bacterial, a bacterial infection of the tonsils, I believe is what that is. Yeah, so it tells you what it thinks it is, and a little bit information about it, what you can expect to see for treatment, things like that. And then encourages you to get in contact with your doctor about it. Oops. So as you can see, it is a little bit clunky, but it works more or less as intended. And for the time frame that we had, it actually works quite well. Some of the limitations that our project currently has is, first of all, there's really no way for users to reset their passwords, for instance, if they forget them or if they just want to update them for security reasons. Also, the input on some of our forms is a little bit picky. For instance, phone numbers that have to be entered as a 10-digit number, as opposed to being able to allow the users to also enter the parentheses and hyphens that a lot of people use to make the format of phone numbers neater. Also, especially the initial messages that the user has to send to the chatbot, are a little picky. They need to be pretty specific in how they're formatted. Otherwise, the chatbot will not function uh, entirely properly. Um, Also, the UI format of the chatbot is a little bit strange, and it wasn't quite as clean as we were hoping to be able to make it. And finally, some of our authorization control is a little bit limited. Um, for instance, we had we haven't really fully implemented a way to prevent the doctors from navigating to patient windows, um, and such things like that. Some of our future work includes creating a nurse view, which will be able to take in patient questionnaires or patient information during visits. Um, this will kind of help the doctors to be able to view that information directly in the system while they're looking at the patient's diagnoses and prescriptions. Also, we want to add the ability for the program to track hospital room occupancy, um, to just keep track of what rooms are available, and such things like that. Also, we want to add the ability for patients to be able to set up appointments with their doctors. Like I said, resetting passwords is an important um, feature that we would like to add. Also, we don't really have any way to update user accounts, such as if someone moves, there's no way in the UI currently to change that address. Um, and also, we want to be able to limit access of user account manipulation in specific cases. For instance, if a doctor leaves the company or if a patient dies, we still want to keep that information there for record's sake, but we don't really want that data to be able to be edited. Um, for instance, if a doctor leaves a company, that doesn't change the fact that they diagnosed someone with a broken leg 5 years ago. Um, and yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed our presentation.